Okay, so it is Tuesday the 28th of April. I noticed that in my notification to everybody I said March, so I'm wishing the months back in time. So today is our kind of now weekly Claromentis online drop-in Q&A session. So just to talk a little bit about the format before we get going, and also to introduce myself, which is the polite thing to do. So I'm Holly Oliver, trainer and training coordinator at Claromentis. So we've probably spoken before, but if we haven't, hello. And a bit of the format of today. So it goes like this. So over the week, we collect questions from you and collate them and answer them today. So we have about an hour to work through questions and answers. And also at the end of the already submitted questions, if we have time, we will open up the floor and you can ask some questions as well. And as we're going today, if you want to, you can also add your questions to the chat box of GoToMeeting, and I'll be able to see them and answer them, hopefully instantly, but we'll see how that goes. And also just to bear in mind that anything we can't answer today, we will of course follow up with and also send you a catch-up email after the session if needed. Okay, so I've shared my screen, so you should be able to see a desktop with the Claromentis logo on. So hopefully we're all good to go. And we're going to first of all start with a question from Brady. And this question is about knowledge base, and actually more importantly about knowledge base components. So everyone will maybe be a little bit familiar with building publish page templates, and the fact that from our support site Discover, you're able to add smart objects, components, and all of those kinds of things into a publish page. And the main difference is smart objects go into the page, whereas components go into the HTML template of a publish page. And if you can get into it, building publish pages is a very kind of strong and powerful tool to have as a part of your kind of intranet training and development, because it means you can sort of replicate your homepage for lots of different users, departments, teams, and it kind of just, lifts the whole situation and can look very nice, which is always good. So Brady's question is there any way to embed a knowledge base category into a publish page template, just like you can with a news channel? So for example, any questions or articles created in that one particular category would show up on a publish page. So the good answer, or the good news, is yes, there are knowledge-based components to allow you to do this. They're relatively new, so they might not be accessible over on our GitHub or on Discover yet. But this morning, I've kind of asked for an article to be put on Discover so you can access that. But in the meantime, just to show you a little bit about how they look and how they work. So let's scroll down to this bottom of this homepage. So as with most of the components, you will know that you see a kind of short view of an application, and components pull in lots and lots of information from different applications. And this is great because it means you can have constantly refreshed and relevant content on the homepage, and you don't really have to kind of worry about making sure it ends up on the homepage because it's already going to be there. And that's also why components are great for publish pages and publish templates, because obviously it means that content is being created somewhere else and you don't have to worry about continually refreshing the page, not literally, but with content. So here are the two knowledge base components that we have. You've got a recent articles over on the left hand side, which does what it says, displays the most recent articles. And then on the right hand side, we've got recent questions. And you can see this displays a user's profile picture, the question they asked, and also any comments or kind of replies that have been asked or put forward. And then when you click on them, so if we click on this link of the how to have fun article, there's not a lot of information in there, but you get the gist. You can see here it takes you straight to that article. And if we go back one step, and again, same with recent questions. So let's click on that one. And you can see in there, oops, we need a bit of a plugin upgrade, but you can see in there that there's a question, and then we can have a list of discussions that are underneath it. So it works as basically a link to knowledge base. And I think they are great components, especially if you want to start using knowledge base on a regular basis. Because one of the things that kind of comes up with knowledge base quite a lot is that you have to rely on a user to go in and find that information, when actually there's probably loads of really, really cool articles and questions that are continually being asked. So, okay, that's nice. We've talked about the components. And also just to note that really they're the same components that appear in the knowledge base application themselves. So if we click on knowledge base, or itself rather, down the side here, you will always have recent articles and recent questions. So the good news is that these components do exist. We're going to have an article on Discover very soon about how you can install them in a publish page. But I thought I'd just show you a little bit about how they look on the kind of surface and how they appear as components. Let's open that up a little bit bigger. There we go. Okay, so you can see you've got two options here. We've got recent articles component, and we've also got recent questions, and then you can choose a limit, so a number of articles and questions to display, and also you can specify a specific category, which is good because those components within knowledge base simply just put in all of the articles and questions that you have permissions to see. So really it's is great because as a component you can expand functionality a little bit. So all of this will become available soon on Discover, and when that's up I'll send you a link to it, but Brady, I will also send you this information and this code. So hopefully that answers your question. I should mention that with the format, during your question or after your question, I do unmute you because it's good to hear what you're thinking. So Brady, I'm just going to unmute you and you can let me know if that answers your question for today.
Yeah, I think so. What I'm wanting to do is put it into a page like we have the tabs up top, and then I have like a safety tab, and I was hoping that if we have a safety category, that any FAQs that we put in there, any knowledge-based articles or questions would then be pulled directly into that tab. So if that's what that code can be embedded in, then that's what I want to use it for mostly.
Yeah, so it behaves just like all of the other components. So as soon as you put it into the publish template, which is the kind of bit of editing you do in the admin panel for publish. So if we go into admin publish, we know that these list of templates are here. So you can actually add that component into one of these templates and it should display. And it behaves exactly like the news article one. You just add the line of code, specify what you need, and it should display.
Okay, perfect. That's what I want. Thank you so
Brilliant.
much.
You're very welcome. Okay, sadly back on mute. Right, there we go. Okay, brilliant. So the next question, or actually questions today, comes from Elliot. And there's a lot of lovely, helpful questions here that I think are actually very, very beneficial for lots of people, which is always good. Not that all questions aren't relevant and important, but these are a nice mix. So we're going to kind of start with a couple of questions surrounding news and managing news. So the question here really is about how to manage news. So the question is, we create news channels for everything to separate news categories. Is that kind of the right way to do it, or a way to do it? So Elliot, absolutely yes, it is. So we kind of, news is one of those applications that is very, very reflective of the way that you share news as an organization. So with the tendency, I think, with content when you start setting things up is where we have a situation where you create something and then you set permissions on it, it almost becomes like permissions are the kind of complete point of that bit of content. So if we set up a news channel, really what we're trying to do is restrict some sort of access or give people more access. So the emphasis is very much on the permissions. But I actually think, and something that works quite well as a best practice, is actually news channels help your front end user search and filter out news. So it's okay to have one news channel that has just one set of permissions and lots of articles in it, if that's the way you work. But if you are a very, very content heavy, news heavy organization, it's very beneficial to have multiple news channels working all at once. And mainly because if you point people in the right direction, they can use this search area and filter by channel. So all of these channels may have very open and free permissions, but the point is, as somebody who uses the system, I can just come in and I can make sure that I can find everything I'm looking for and filter very, very quickly. And it's one of those kind of things that really benefits from guiding front end users to use news. And that may sound painfully obvious and a little bit I don't know. Yeah, painfully obvious. We'll go with that. But actually, it's probably the easiest way for them to filter and find news that is relevant to them, especially if your news channels are based on location or sector or department or team or whatever you want to call it. It's really, really important that you have that set up. So I would say absolutely yes, managing news channels is the way to do that. And also just to make sure that you have very strong kind of tagging systems as well, because tags are really good because within an article it then relates it to other articles in the same kind of channel. So I now have to just illustrate that and try and find one that is up and running. Okay, so Teams is a good one for that. So I can search team and you can see that I have the tags that get pulled back from multiple channels. But also if I go into an article, over on the right hand side, it will pull in all of the related news that is tagged with the same stuff in the channel it's in. So really, channels are important because you can sort and you can categorize and people can find stuff, but also to have a very strong tagging system really is the way forward. So Elliot, hopefully that answers your question. I am going to unmute you so you can let me know if it does. Oh, hello. Hello.
It does. Thank you, Holly.
You're very welcome. Hi.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry.
Hi.
Cool. Brilliant.
It does answer it. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so moving on, let's jump to the next question, which kind of relates a little bit to putting an emphasis on actually having a strong tagging system, which is kind of around how you can get the most out of tags and also search recommendations. Now, this has changed slightly in the newer version of Claromentis. So, Elliot, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you're on 7.4 yet, but if you're on 7.3, the processes are pretty much the same, apart from the way search works in 7.4 has now changed quite considerably. So we've gone from a search bar at the top that is quite isolated in terms of the fact that you have little control over what it searches in terms of applications, to using Elasticsearch, which everyone is very exciting about and sounds exciting, so that's good. And just to show you Elasticsearch very quickly, if you are not on a 7.4 system yet, or if you haven't seen it, if we come in here and search a term, Elasticsearch looks like this. So it pulls from lots more applications than search in 7.3 did. And then we can also filter instantly by application type. And you'll be familiar with this. You'll know before in 7.3 you weren't able to search people directly from up here. You might have had a drop down, but yeah. And you can see along here we've got lots of different applications, and we can also have a little bit of a more button as well. So the kind of view of search and the way it works has changed, but the standard functionality around tagging and search recommendations is pretty much the same, if not a little bit more refined. So we're going to start with the question on tags, which is really what's the best way to tidy up your tagging system. And this question comes from having two tags that maybe have uppercase and lowercase, etc., etc. So they just look a little bit clunky, and some of them are repeated or mean the same thing, all of that kind of stuff. Now, it shouldn't be possible to create two tags of the same name, even if they are lower or uppercase. So if this is happening, we might need a little bit more of an investigation there. But I'll just show you an example of that. So if I click on this existing article, which looks very exciting, I'm going to edit that. And we're kind of all used to now having this tagging system. It's a very standard tagging system, separated by commas and spaces, and popular tags appear below. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add another tag, which is team with a capitalized T. So let's add that. So you'll see that automatically it doesn't read the capitalization. It just reads the word and suggests that actually I put team instead of, or I just click that because it matches. And then if I go down here and I save my article with that new tab, it should stop me and say such a tag already exists, because actually we're not creating anything new. We're just adding a big T to the front of it. So if you have been able to do that, and I do think there was maybe a point in 7.2 when we were able to do that, but from 7.3 onwards, I don't think you should be able to do that on the system. But that is not to say that we can't fix that if that has happened. And the kind of good thing about this question is tagging, as you know, is all over the place. So we have it in news, in documents, in idea spaces. It's pretty much everywhere. So there is a way to manage tags across the system. So we're going to go into applications and into admin. And then we're going to go into the tags admin panel. So in here, it's a kind of overview of all of the tags that are currently used on the system. And it's also the place where you can control permissions on who creates new tags. And this is a big one because obviously if you have this open, your tagging management will be quite extensive because people will just be able to create content and write their own tags whenever they want. But if you lock that down, you use permissions to make sure only a few people can create tags, it actually long term just makes it much more scalable and manageable. Okay, so let's just first have a quick look at the rights to create new tags. And you'll see that this is pretty straightforward as permission boxes go. We've just got all registered in there, but we can just remove them and add good old trusty internet administrators if we want to. So very, very simple, no rights other than this, and we can just apply permissions there. Okay, and obviously that is one to think about, because if the way that you are generating content is actually reliant on lots and lots of different people doing that, there's probably quite a few big groups, content managers, creators, that you would want to have access to create new tags. So it's really worth a think about how you want to set that up, especially if you kind of want to give people the kind of control over the content they're creating. All right, so let's get back to tag management. So in here, we've got a list of all of the tags on the system. You've got their name, a potential translation in localization. You've got where they're used in, so you can see that pulls across there. We've also got the amount of times that tag has been used. And then right at the end, we've got the ability to edit that tag. And all that allows you to do is change the tag name and also add a translation. So if you are using your intranet in multiple languages, when you switch to French, it will then say the French word for accounts, which I'm sure is a lot simpler than I'm giving it credit for. But so you can add a translation for lots of different things, and it's really, really good if you have a multilingual system to do this, because this is one that people kind of tend to miss, but actually it's really simple to add translations, a lot simpler than other areas. So that's all you get if you edit, and that's kind of like our tag. But right down at the bottom, we have this little tiny window here, which is merging and deleting tags. And it's pretty self-explanatory, I suppose, and it's in bold, which means, yeah, we kind of figure out what it does. But this is great for those instances where you have two tags that are sort of the same, but not, especially capitalized and all of that kind of stuff. So what we can do in here is we can select our tags. So let's say I'm going to merge marketing and Mexico together, and you could do this with anything. So we can add that one, and we can add another one. There we go. And then I'm going to click merge, and then what it will do is it will ask me which one is the one I kind of want to be the default tab. So I want Mexico to basically appear under marketing. I drag that over here and hit save. So now what happens if we scroll down, you'll see Mexico is gone, marketing is there, and it now has an extra tag in it. So it's inherited that one from Mexico. And you'll notice that there's no way to come back from that. So now I can just see marketing is my default. So let's do that again with another one. Let's say that something like brand and brand guidelines, they're very similar. So let's go with merging that. So I want to take brand. Actually, let's do branding and branding. Yeah, there we go. And branding. So, the same word. So again, we select those two and we just write them in that tags field like we would when we're creating a news article, etc. Click merge. Choose the one that you want to kind of merge the other one into. So let's move that over here. So we just drag and drop that over and hit save. Oops. I think I double click save. Let's just have a quick look. But it's worked. So we've lost brand and we've now just got branding up there. So very quickly you can take two tags and merge them together. And oh, Elliot, I've just seen you're on 725. So yes, that will be it. But this should still work in 7.2. So you can still get to that tag management area, admin tags, and you can pick those two out and merge them together. So the two same words effectively. And also, incidentally, down here is where you delete them as well. So let's get rid of yay, although that is my favorite tag. So we select that, click delete. It'll ask me if I'm sure, and yes, it goes, and it will remove that tag from whatever news article or bit of information it was associated with. So can you rename tags to be lowercase? So just had another question. Yeah, you can. You should be able to click edit, I think, and hit save. So apparently in 7.4 by default they are always lowercase. So that shouldn't be an issue now. I will double check if you can do that on 7.2 for you. So I'm just going to make a note of that. So let's write that down. So lowercase. Yeah, bear with me. I will double check if you are able to do that. Get the same error. Yeah. So I think we picked up on that. So Elliot has just said that he gets the same error message. So it's not distinguishing between the different uppercase and lowercase. But Elliot, if you merge them together and choose the lowercase one as the default, does that work? Maybe that will work, potentially. But I think what happens, okay, that does work. Brilliant. I do love instant communication. It's great, isn't it? Sorry, everybody else. So cool. So that works. So by default, they're all lowercase now. And in 7.2, the problem that Elliot was facing was that they were both coming up as uppercase and lowercase. So we have resolved that, which is brilliant news. Okay, cool. So you're welcome. Thank you very much for the question. So kind of tag related, I guess, is this next question, which is all about managing search. Again, I think that the search admin panel is one of those places that is definitely worth spending a little bit more time in. Tags is obviously a big deal because it helps relate things to each other for users, but search has a lot of kind of useful features in it, especially for administrators. And if it's a new system, or if you're kind of feeling that your existing users are struggling to find bits on the internet, search is an absolutely great way. Search recommendations is a good way to counteract that. So let's quickly go back to home and talk about this kind of next part. So I'm going to search Brighton because we're coming from a very sunny Brighton today. Now I can look for this for Brighton and it will return results. Now, one of the things obviously that we are aware of in general kind of searching terms and being human beings is that sometimes you spell stuff a bit wrong, and it helps if there is a way for people to actually say, well, did you mean this? So a part of search is setting up search recommendations and your best bets for useful information. So if I search, I don't know, if I spell Brighton, Brigton, it happens. well, nothing really comes up. I've got no results, and if I'm not really paying too much attention or I miss it, I don't really know why. Now, usefully, in 7.4, over on the right-hand side, you actually get a recent searches list, which is quite cool. But also here, you can see we've got a can't find what you're looking for area. Now, users have access to this, and they can come in and they can say, well, I was looking for Brighton. And I can hit submit. That request will be submitted, and anybody who has access to the admin panel for search will receive a notification that someone is looking for stuff and they can't find it. This is also a very, very good way to kind of gauge what is and isn't there in your system and what people actually want to kind of see. So we're going to leave the front end of search and we're going to go into admin and we're going to go into search. Okay. So this will probably look very different from 7.2. It does look also different from 7.3, but this is how new search admin looks. And the change came about when Elasticsearch arrived. So the processes are pretty similar, but our options have expanded a little bit. So our first tab is the indexing service, and this is simply just Claromentis looking through all of the documents and bits and pieces that you have uploaded and created, and indexing them, so recording all of that information and making it searchable. So it's a kind of a little bit of technical information, but really it's just about, right, is everything running okay? If you can't find the document and you're sure you've uploaded it and you're sure permissions are working fine, it might be there's a problem with indexing. So it's a nice way to come and just work out if that is what's happening. Also, if you do a major bulk upload, you can see the requests in the queue. So that's the documents or bits of content or whatever waiting to be processed. So the one we're going to talk about is search recommendations, but before we do that, I just want to talk about a few other things that is new in Elasticsearch. So in here, we have an applications tab. Now this allows us to choose what applications users can filter by in search. So you'll notice that at the top of the screen, let's just do another little search. So let's do that. Also, you will notice that when you actually hit return, searches are quite quick. Well, they're a lot quicker than they were in 7.3 and 2. So in here along the top, you can see that we have these tabs, which we can then filter by. Now, in the search admin panel, we can choose as administrators what tabs are displayed and also the order they're displayed in. So if your organization and your users are mostly people use that search box for documents, so we probably want that to be first. And then we can think about other things. If you're not using info capture, you might want to bump that down a little bit, or you might want to not use it at all by hitting the cross and it will jump down here to the hidden applications area. So you can actually start to customize how that works and yourself manage how people interact with stuff. So for example, we might not use forum, not a lot of people do, but some people do, so we could put importance on that. And again, it's about you being responsive to ways that people are looking for things on your system. So if you're a big info capture user, you probably want documents info capture. If your priority is people, we put people right at the very top. And it's just simply dragging and dropping, which is nice. Nice and easy to do. Automatically updates, which is great. And we also have a little bit of a more separator as well. So if we don't want to confuse people too much, if the jump to 7.4 is a big change, we can keep it nice and straightforward for a bit. So we can slowly roll out new tabs. So if I refresh that, you'll see it's much cleaner and much easier for me to use. And then if I'm so inclined, I can click the more, and then I can also filter by those applications. So that's that new tab in there. And it's also quite nice, like I said, because at the bottom you can see all of the applications that are available for search. And that whole process is a lot clearer than it was. Then we have search options. which is kind of what it says on the tin. So you can display similar searches by other users. So when I looked for Brigton and it said, hey, somebody looked for Brighton not that long ago, that's that control. So whether or not you use that would be completely up to you. Obviously dependent on it's completely up to you really. And there are no controls over permissions for that. So it's simply, well, do you display it or do you not? Results per page, we're pretty familiar with that, and we can go up to 100, which is nice. And also down at the bottom you can see you have here search suggestions or user search suggestions. So when I'm working in the search box, if I'm looking for something that I can't find, you can allow users to say, I can't find this, or you can lock that down. And again, it's limited permissions, so it's a simply all or nothing kind of situation that you're working with. But it's good that you can turn it on and off. So let's save that. And then the last one is re-indexing. And you've always got to worry when there's a big red box at the top of a tab or an option. And this is a big deal because really what this allows you to do is to re-index the entire system. It takes a while, it can be a bit of a long process, and there are only some reasons why you would actually need to do it. So that's more of a kind of technical side of things if you want to have a look at that. But always heed warnings for a bit anyway. Okay, so those are all of the other tabs. We've got our indexing service, which is just giving us a status update on how the system is reading documents. Our applications tab, so we can specify what applications are searchable at what point and what people can filter by. Our search options, again, we can say, right, do you want to display recent searches that are similar to other users? And also, do you want to allow search suggestions? And the last one, the slightly technical bit, is to re-index all of the kind of different applications on the system. So let's go to the main question, which is search recommendations. So the real question is managing search and recommendations based on people not being able to find things. So how can you be responsive to user requests? So we've just seen in search options that I can allow users to search or submit search suggestions if they can't find something they're looking for. So again, this is partly leaving this open for people to add suggestions to or let you know what they can't find. And it's also partly guiding people to use that. Perhaps rather than them just retyping a search, saying, oh, look, you can add that there if you want to. Also extremely useful for very specific documents that people can't find. So let's go back to search recommendations. Now, behind search recommendations is a tab, and that says user requests. And in here, what this is all of the information that was submitted or searched for by that user when they made that request. So first of all, we get the search term, what they were looking for. We get the comment, and the comment is what they made, what they wrote in the kind of what am I looking for? I can't find what I'm looking for. And then we get our user, and we also get the date of that submission or the date of that request. So instantly here you have a complete kind of guide as to what people are looking for, what they think they should find, and what they're actually not finding, which is actually powerful information, because now you can say, right, if people are looking for this very specific document, how can we get it to them quicker? And also, is it there in the first place? So they're kind of like real-time, real people analytics. Actually, you might obviously get the odd comment in there that isn't related to the search term, like why isn't this here? But usually you just get a little bit more information about what they're looking for. So as people add requests, they appear here in the admin panel. And you'll notice that even me, as the person who submitted the request, can see it. So it's an overseeing, overarching view of all of the user requests. Now, just underneath those, we've got the ability to notify admin when somebody submits a user request. Now, this is a really big one because it's very easy for these requests just to come in and pile up without any kind of, you might set aside some time to deal with them, but it's quite good to be notified when somebody's looking for something and they can't find it. Now, when it says notify admin, here it's mainly saying, well, actually, it is saying anybody who has access to search in the admin panel will get a notification when a search request is added. So it's quite good to leave that ticked. And then the other one, which is kind of a new one, which is notify the user if their search suggestion is used, which is cool. So if we do respond to that and we create a search recommendation over here, which we're going to look at in a moment, and a suggestion comes up, we can then send them a notification based on that. So there's a few things going on there. Real-time responses from real people using the system. Then the opportunity for you as administrators to react to that, and also to confirm and let the user know that their search suggestion has been used. Because obviously it's great getting feedback, but it's also important to let people know if you have used it. So, that in mind, let's go into search recommendations, because from here really all this is just the data. What we want to do is be a bit reactive and set up some search recommendations in here. So this functionality in these processes is much the same as it is in 7.2 and 7.3. You set up a search recommendation that has a group, search terms, suggestions, and best bets. So that hasn't been modified or changed that much. It just looks slightly different now. So we're going to start by coming over here and adding a search recommendation. So the first thing is we can group these searches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this group name, we're going to call it Brighton. There we go. So when I create my group name, I can then associate search terms to that group name. Now, our users aren't really going to interact with the name of the group, so we could call this whatever we wanted. We could identify it by location, department, team, whatever. It's completely up to you. The important bit is the search terms and the suggestions and the best bits, because those are the bits that our front-end users are going to be looking at. So, search terms. These are the things that people are looking for or might be looking for. So, for example, with Brighton, one of the big ones with search terms is spelling errors or very easy to make typos. So in here, I'm going to add Brighton. In it goes. But then I'm going to think of other related things. So perhaps if somebody searches, I don't know, let's go for sunshine or seaside or all of those sorts of things. Some related search terms. There you go. Now, what we can do is we can say, right, when people look for those search terms, if they go for those, if they're a typo, if they're very kind of obscure, but they kind of make sense, which is often the case, we can then suggest options. So, for example, if someone searches Brighton, I kind of want to suggest that actually they meant Brighton. If someone suggests sunshine, maybe I want to say I've got a document that is related to it being a little bit sunny, and so on and so forth. So if anyone searches these terms, they will see these suggestions come back to them. So that's the second step. And you can see that we can just keep on adding these. So we can group relevant search terms together, and then at the same time we can group suggestions together as well. So the very, very last bit, once we have added our search terms, because actually we might have suggestions that result in searches that are more accurate or more useful. I know this is a little bit of a crude example, but it is summer and I'm in a good mood, so we're going to go with Brighton. But this could be anything. It could be policies, it could be your suggestions, could be internal reference numbers, anything. So you can kind of see how it expands quite quickly. So the last bit, and something that we use in our support site and across the board, is best bets, because it's a really good way to take those search terms and make sure that people are kind of finding useful information. So even if I spell Brighton wrong, I still maybe want to document about Brighton. I think that's a fair thing to kind of recommend to people. Or even if you search the correct term, this is probably the most relevant document to you. Now, if you know that as content creators, administrators, that's a big thing. And obviously that makes users' lives really well, it just makes life much easier, doesn't it? If you don't have to search through lots and lots of documents because they all have a similar title, etc. So we're going to come down here and add a best bet. So what this allows us to do is to add a link to a resource. So this resource could be an external web page, it could be an internal website, internal web address within Claromentis, and also a name and a description. So really what we're doing is we're going to have a box on the side of our search area that then displays relevant information and best bets. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to documents. So I'm just going to open this in another tab. And I'm going to find a document that is relevant to this search. So let's go into useful documents. And we've got a couple of bits of information here about Brighton. So I'm going to click on that document and I'm going to grab the link. If it's internal, you can use the relative links, which is everything from /intranet. If it's external, you probably need the whole thing. So let's grab that and go back and add ourselves a best bet. So I'm going to add the URL, in it goes, and then I'm going to give it a name. So let's say we might want to change that. Let's say about Brighton. I don't know. That'll do. And then we could say this document is all about Brighton. Okay. So up here, you'll see it will also check if the resource is valid, if it's a valid application, and permissions are supported. So obviously the thing that might happen sometimes is you may have a very locked down document, in which case it's probably not going to show. So you'll get all of those checks before you commit to hit and save. So let's hit save and add that one. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to add another document. And I'm going to put them in order. So obviously my about document is going to be first. And then I'm going to grab the link for my more about document. So let's copy that and close that down. So we can add another best bet. Let's paste that in. More about Brighton. Oops, see, typos everywhere. Oh, and again. There we go. So we might say this document tells you more about Brighton, but not as much as the first one. So we can hit save, and you can see that you can reorder these as well. So you have a lot of control over the order that these best bets appear. And then we've set all that up. So we've got our search terms, so the things people are going to be looking for, our suggestions, so what should they be looking for, or what might help them find the thing that they want, and then our best bets, what we think as kind of admin or content managers that they will actually be useful. So let's hit save. And then in here, you will see now we've got our group name, search terms, the suggestions, and also best bets are all in there. So now, if we go back to home, and we're going to search Brigton, there it is. Let's hit return. So now what happens is search is changed from, oh, sorry, there are no results, to try Brighton. Try Sunny, see what you find. There are our suggestions. Then over here on the right, we've got recent searches like this one, Brighton, which we know we've enabled, so that's fine. And then we've got our best bets. So this document is all about Brighton. So if we click on that link, it will take us to that particular document. There it is. And again, we have the second one as well, more about Brighton. And then right at the bottom, we have our, well, you still can't find what you're looking for, let us know. So here, if I click Brighton, it'll refresh and it will show us all of that information that's related to Brighton. Now, you can see how the best bet for that search term has disappeared. So if we go back into the admin panel and into search, into our recommendations and into that group. So let's click on the group name. And in there, if I add Brighton, so it's quite usual to have your search term and group name very similar. So if we add that, and we go Brighton, you'll see then we also get the best bets pop up for that. Now, how you manage these, you can see there are a few little issues. So you can actually have maybe a separate search group for the correct spelling of words, because it will say, well, try also Brighton, etc. But another thing that's very interesting now about these search recommendations is if we go down to search and back into that group. So let's go through the motions, search recommendations into Brighton. Down here, you'll see we've got match requests. So what this has done is it said, right, in the user requests area, somebody looked for Brigton, and now you have added Brigton to a search term. It's matched those two things up and it will send that user out a notification. So now that user will have something that says your search term or your request has been fulfilled, and now you can look for that information and find relative stuff based on that. So managing these search recommendations is, as you can see, a really strong tool, and it takes search from something that actually people use probably all the time, and most likely they probably don't get everything they could out of it, to actually it being something that you can have a little bit of control over and also really be responsive. So if a user needs to find something, you can make sure that you have found, or you have kind of sorted that out and make sure they have what they're looking for. And anything that helps improve the system and helps usability, I think is a good thing to spend some time thinking about. So that's managing search and recommendations. So Elliot, you are still unmuted. How do you feel about that? Have you got any additional questions, and does that kind of answer what you were looking for?
It makes sense. We were getting user requests build up, and it was trying to work out what the difference was between the best bets and the different words and where to put in the incorrect spelling. So that makes complete sense now. Thank you.
Brilliant. You're welcome. Okay, cool. It's always good to hear. It's my favourite response. All right, so we've got about 5 minutes left, which is good because we've got one last question. And this question is about publish, and more importantly, how you allow another, well, it says here admin, but user to amend the permissions on a publish folder. So this is a great question because it is one of those things that will come up at some point, especially if you are somebody who builds out content structure, or you are an administrator who has created a structure and then allowed other content creators and managers to come in and look after that. So there is a tendency, once you have the correct content permission set up, to create content or build structure from the front end of the application that you're talking about. So a good example of that is documents. So in documents, if we go to the documents admin panel, we know that if we manage the document list, we can then come over here and use this small key icon to edit the permissions and allow certain users to add top level folders. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that they can add top level folders in the admin panel, because those permissions are completely separate. But what we're talking about here is we're giving up, or we're giving content control over to somebody else in the front end. So the tendency is that once you have that, you go into documents, even if you're an administrator, and you add a folder. Actually, we need to be in the root of documents. So let's go back there and you add a folder. So let's call this something like useful forms. You do that, and then you set permissions on that particular folder. Now here, you'll notice that the edit permissions link is grayed out. So because you are creating this folder from the front end of documents, it doesn't allow you to give somebody else the right to change permissions. Now, this is a massive one for administrators, because for me, as somebody who would maybe be setting up a system, the front end of documents is very easy to use. It's less clicking, it's simpler to get there, and it looks, it's much more visual. So you would probably come in and build out all of these structures and it would look lovely. And then you would probably add somebody in here. So let's say our internet administrators. And actually, I want everybody in that role to be able to change the permissions on that folder. Or we might have a particular department. And let's say I want to actually give marketing the ability to expand who this folder is shared with. If I can't give them edit permission rights, they can't do that. So anytime the permissions on that folder need to be adjusted, I have to do it. The owner, the creator, or somebody who has admin access has to do it. And it's pretty similar in publish. So if we go to publish, again, we're in the front end, and obviously with publish, the emphasis is on the front end being where your content creators are. So really, administrators, content creators, there is no front end, back end, because your usual users and your general users use this to integrate and to play with publish. So we would naturally come in here, create a folder, and then be prompted to set up permissions on it. But again, down the bottom, we have this edit permissions right, but it's grayed out. So I can't say, right, I'm going to create this folder for marketing, so add them in there, and then give them the ability to share or change who can do what in this folder. So this is very, very common as an issue that crops up. And the kind of point of this, showing you it in documents and in publish, is it's all about the difference between front end and back end. So front end and admin panel, that's really the biggie. So those edit permissions can be changed from the admin panel, but bigger than that, you can actually create folders where you can set that up in the admin panel. And I'll show you that difference now. So if we come in here and we look at main, for example, from the admin panel, I can edit permissions, and you'll see now this is tickable. So it stopped being grayed out because I'm in the admin. It's giving people a lot of control over something, but I can now apply that. So instead of it being really, really locked down in the front end and being quite restricted in that only the owner or the person who creates the folder can change permissions, if you build the structure of publish from the admin panel in terms of folders, you can change that as you go. Or at any point, you can come into publish admin, click on the folder that you want to change, view edit permissions, and from there it will then allow you to update that information and give people the right to change permissions. But interestingly enough, if you add a folder from the documents admin or publish admin, so let's do that, you'll see that that is now accessible. So it's up to you how you do it. You either create your folders from the front end and then go into the admin panel and change permissions, or you can create folders from the admin panel and edit permissions as you go. So very quickly here we can add another menu. So let's call this something like main intranet. We can add a description, so let's just say main intranet folder. Oops. And then we can add some people in there. So I can give up, as an intranet administrator or a content manager, I can give up those rights to being the only person who can edit permissions. So now anybody who is an intranet administrator can come in and change the setup of that folder. And it's a big one. It's a big permission, the ability to change. It's difficult to say it without using the word permissions twice, but it's a difficult one to give people the permissions to change permissions, because obviously, actually, what you're doing is you are, like I've said, giving up a little bit of control over who has access to what folders. But if you are in that position where you're relying on other users who are responsible content creators to manage folders, then you need to be able to, and they need to be able to, change who can see that folder. Now, the saving grace about all of that, so giving up a little bit of power, we don't have to really see it like that, I suppose, because actually, as administrators, regardless of the content permissions that are set on that folder in publish, in documents, you can still always come into your admin panel and view that folder and change permissions. So nothing is ever lost in that process. So if somebody does accidentally change permissions and now nobody can see it, you can still say, well, that's all right. I'm just going to go into admin, into either documents or publish, find that particular folder, and then change the permissions on it back to whatever you need them to do. But it's a big and important question, especially because the nature of it is to only allow you to do this from the admin panel, but also because from the front end, rights are always inherited. So when you add a folder at root level, then you add a subfolder, it's just going to keep on adding out the same permissions set up as you go along. So it's a one to look out for. And I guarantee you, if you have recently set up a system or haven't looked at a folder since you set up the system, that the permissions are probably set so only you are the person who can edit permissions. So yeah, one to look out for, and an absolutely brilliant question. So, Elliot, is that all good? Does that make sense? A bit of tension.
It does, yes, thank you.
Yes.
I think that's where we were going wrong. We'd set it up, and it wasn't in there. And we kept looking to try and tick the box, and we couldn't because it was greyed out, as you said, but we weren't going in the admin. So thank you.
You're very welcome. So yeah, so it's good. It's good to know also that we all share similar problems. I forget that from time to time too, so I think it's allowed. Okay, cool. So I think that is our time up. In fact, we're a little bit over. So thank you so much for coming today. Thank you for the questions and also answers that you've kind of helped us to provide. As always, the recording of this session should go onto YouTube and will be up, I think, hopefully this week. We will also be running another session next week, which will be announced on Discover shortly. And in the meantime, if you have any questions that have come up from today, please feel free to send over an email to training@claromentis.com. And if there's anything we've missed, or you even want to just get your questions in early, please do that as well. But thank you so much for your time, and have a lovely rest of your day and rest of the week. Take care.